give us some best case uses around advertisers using first-party data.
Yep. So I would say definitely the use of it is accelerating. So, whereas even as recently as a few years ago, there weren't that many people doing anything meaningful with first-party data beyond direct mail and kind of the classic uses. Today in media, there's a lot that's possible. And everything from the use of first-party data to develop really qualified audiences of people for whom if you get the right message in front of them, they're going to behave in a way that you want them to. And that plays out differently for different advertisers. So a CPG company might be interested in trying to find somebody at the point of purchase or where they're making up their mind about the kind of detergent they like. Those are different sort of uses of first-party. But for a retailer or somebody that's really concerned with driving consumption, having that data available enables them to really tightly target those individuals that they have a reason to believe are going to be in their stores. That's very powerful. And they can actually measure whether or not that happens. Something we call closed-loop measurement. So you can look at, were people exposed to advertising in this particular audience? We know who they are because they're first-party. And then did they actually go and do something that we want them to do? Shop in our stores, go on our website. That's incredibly powerful. So for certain advertisers right now, they really can't live without first-party data. There's very few scenarios where it doesn't involve that when we're trying to drive a sale.
So what about this sort of hyper-targeting, addressable world that we can now attain to some degree versus more broad brand building, and how do you see that sort of the balance?
So I think the two have to work together. And you need to be careful that you don't optimize towards specific audiences and optimize yourself out of business, because that's possible too. And I think a lot has to do with understanding the role advertising plays, again, for a given brand and what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So some advertisers aren't known to customers. They need to become known, so they drive a lot of brand advertising to create awareness. Once you've done that, then you can begin to move toward stuff that's lower funnel, that is much more targeted. The other problem with highly targeted advertising is scale. So you can only get to a particular level of scale in certain channels. Addressable television is a great example. It's highly effective. We know it works at driving specific kinds of actions, but there's a limit to how much of it you can do. And we know that doing that in the absence of brand advertising on television to broader audiences doesn't work very well. So you need the two. The trick is in understanding what the balance is between the two and how much of one does one job versus another. And that's really, I think, where there's been some evolution recently. I think television in particular is going to become more and more targeted, and the opportunity to target specific audiences will become more and more available in television, which has traditionally been broadcast. The trick will be, what happens to the kinds of messages that we see on TV. Do they continue to be beautiful brand building, equity-based messages, or does television as a medium move more in the direction of driving, promotional conversion? I think that'll be very interesting to watch.
And I wanted to ask you about, you touched on performance a little earlier on, sort of what are clients expecting out of their dollar, and what are sort of the new sort of use cases around performance that you think are important?
I think every advertiser needs to have a reasonable expectation that whoever's placing money on their behalf can tell them with a level of confidence what that money is returning in terms of performance and benefit. I think the days of an advertiser just kind of spending money and hoping for the best are over. But largely that's true because what you can do now in terms of measurement is a lot more than you used to be able to. So, just as we talked about using first-party data for targeting, granular data is available to measure the extent to which people are exposed to advertising and then what they did as a result. And that's really the equation, that's the question that you're trying to answer when you're looking at how did an advertising investment perform. That kind of analysis used to be available only to a few advertisers who could spend the money. Now it's much more widely available, and there are simple ways to kind of do that. Certainly in digital media, every advertiser investing money in digital should have a really good and confident understanding of what that money is returning because it's measurable. You get into, when you use the whole spectrum of tactics across television, outdoor print, the whole spectrum of media, it's more complicated how you measure that, but very doable. And there are so many innovations now and data sets available to help you understand at very, very granular levels what individual people are actually being exposed to advertising, and then what are they doing in response to it. So if you're a big advertiser spending lots of money on lots of different things, I think you're doing yourselves a disservice if you don't have an understanding of how that's returning, because that's what helps you make decisions about what to do more of and what to do less of to optimize the return you get for that money. And nobody's spending advertising dollars free flowing without constraints. So having an understanding of really what's effective is incredibly helpful.
And Jason, finally, the Essence is growing very quickly. One of the biggest parts of GroupM now. Tell us a little bit about how you guys are defining or what a media agency is, or a little bit about your DNA.
Yeah, I mean, Essence's mission is to make advertising more valuable to the world. And I think everything that we do and think about is really tied to that mission, and we use that as sort of a guidepost, for how we think about evolving capabilities, how we think about serving clients, and creating really good outcomes for our clients. And I think the idea of advertising being something that actually creates value and is additive to the experience that a guest has at Target or someone who sees a film that's put out by Universal Pictures. There's something very rich and interesting in that, in the world of advertising. And I think that's a very different point of view typically for a media agency to have, which makes it really interesting for me to kind of be part of it. And I think it has created a lot of interesting dialogues with our clients about the sort of nature of advertising and how we think about what advertising should be and what it could be. And that's taken us in some really interesting directions. I think you're going to see a lot more of that coming out of Essence. Some very, very interesting things coming from our clients. But I think it's fun and sort of exciting to be part of an agency that has that kind of a mission as its founding principle.